Hansoned. We're Hansoned out. Isaac, Zach, and Taylor Hanson are in the building.
Oh, my heart just exploded. I mean, I first met these guys so long ago, and you're celebrating 25 years as a band.
Yeah, you guys are like the OGs.
This is crazy.
We are kind of OGs.
Yeah. I mean,
mostly just O. But anyway.
Oh, maybe OGs like OGEEZ.
OGs.
Oh, that means we're half dead, Nick.
Well, can I ask a serious question about that? Because I mean, okay, you guys just celebrating 25 years, and like I said, you're like the OGs, and like some bands, who've been at it for that long have been able to stay around and kind of stay relevant as things change around them. But you're in the unique position where so many things, from the phenomenon of the internet to recording everything on digital Pro Tools as opposed to tape to social media, that's all come at a time where you were really growing up yourselves with all those innovations. So you probably weren't as much thrown by the huge changes that have occurred culturally, technologically speaking, as other bands that have been around 25 years.
No, it's an odd thing. I mean, we're, for better or for worse, we're strangely a category of one, because, and oftentimes for worse, because we don't get invited to every party, because you're an indie band, but you're a pop band, but you've been doing it for 25 years, which means like the Heritage Act should call you, but you don't know them because they're 20 years older than you are. But actually, a lot of our best friends are artists that are a lot older than we are.
That's better.
But we had a strange situation, which was exactly what you described. We did emerge with the internet, and a lot of our journey, we've run our record company for 15 years, been independent ever since our third record. We basically lost our label on our second record because of the huge merger that happened. So we only had one real record with a label that signed us, a major label that signed us and cared about it. And so we had 15 years, but the ability to bridge that gap is largely to do with the fact that we connected with fans directly through the internet in that first wave. And I was 14, and we were all getting our first email addresses, and our audience, who, a lot of our audience has grown up with us, is our peers. We had that connection, and record companies, we'd have these conversations with the label, and they go, websites, whatever.
Nobody had a website.
Nobody cared.
You guys and
Nobody
the movie
cared.
Space Jam. That was it.
It was, and
Space Jam is still on the internet now.
It's a classic. I've got kids, and I'm like, you guys are going to watch Space Jam. Come on.
That community, though, is really the secret sauce. I mean, in realizing, we saw early on that there was a community that was bigger than us that could talk to each other, right?
Well, we appreciated the internet so much that we were willing to take the risk on having an ISP at one point. We actually were an internet service provider.
For our fans.
For our fans.
You and Bowie. Bowie did that back then.
And that's actually, we partnered with the same company that did Bowie's.
No.
So,
That's awesome.
Well, 25 years ago, I mean, you guys, you hit with Mbop a little later than 25 years ago, but 25 years ago, 1992, Hanson Forums. Zach was 7 years old. And I was wondering about that time period, because 1992, we're in the middle of grunge.
Yep.
It's a really dark place. Hanson is known for your positivity, your sunny, your harmonies.
Yeah.
You don't break through until a few years later. You guys, the Spice Girls, what was it like trying to sell your brand of music in 1992 to the world?
Yeah, how did you not get killed, first of all?
Well, we got turned down by everyone, first of all, because it didn't sound like anything. And I think artists, a lot of times, you get into this game of chasing what's relevant right now. And I think a big lesson that is to remember that oftentimes the thing that's not going with what culture is doing right now is the thing that pops through. Because, to be counterculture, it's like, think about Alanis Morissette's record 94. It's like out of nowhere, think about grunge when it happened out of nowhere. And so I think we shopped ourselves like a local band, but we were so young we couldn't play bars, so we built a fan base at like festivals and arts fairs and block parties and stuff.
Sold thousands of records as an indie band, and had thousands of people on mailing lists.
But it was basically what it was like was getting turned down by everyone and watching people's eyes cross, and
but it's okay, because we were used to that, though. We were used to being the oddball, because even within our friend and fan kind of circle, everyone knew that this was kind of like not a normal thing, because we were kids who grew up listening to late 50s and early 60s rock and roll. No one in our peer group was like, "Oh yeah, dude, the Jackson 5 or Chuck Berry." Yes, absolutely.
You would like Splish Splash, Johnny Be Good. These were what you were were playing in 1992.
Exactly. And in fact, so much so that Zach actually kicked our neighbor out of our house when you were probably 9 years old, because you said, man, well, we were listening to the Jackson, or we were listening to Jackson 5, and he said, who is that? And Zach goes,
you don't know what Jackson 5 are?
You don't know the Jackson 5? The Jackson 5? And then Zach said, you're out of here.
I no longer have a brother. You're dead to me.
Something like that. Yeah.
I think the thing that, to follow up on that is to say we were in our own bubble musically. We weren't looking around and saying, hey, this is what's happening on Top 40. We were hearing soul music, early rock and roll, and so we were unabashedly stepping into those shoes, and that's also part of why we didn't have any hesitation about becoming a band and thinking we wanted to be signed as young people, as teenagers, because we saw the Elvis, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and these guys, they all broke when they were 16, 17. I mean, that to us, that was like, of course. I mean, we feel like we're behind. I mean, Michael Jackson got signed at 12. I was pissed that we didn't get signed before I turned 13. and it was like, man.
Well, we definitely want to talk about your new Christmas album, your second one, but I want to go back to what you're saying. You guys have been independent for quite some time, but you began on a gigantic major label.
Yeah.
And, I've always told bands when I've come across them, look, it's better to not be signed than to be signed to a label that doesn't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
Especially now. And so when you guys were signed, then there's all these mergers in the 90s. Yeah. And so you ended up like what? Trying to explain what to do with your music to hip hop cats.
Well, we had
exactly. I mean, that's exactly right.
We had the best possible worst case scenario, in the sense that our first record was hugely successful, right? And so when it came to our second record, and all of a sudden there's this huge merger right in the middle of making that record,
making the second record,
we were still perceived as an asset. So they dropped like 200 bands from our label, and they kept us as one of those bands.
In hindsight, we kind of wish they would.
But we're like, oh my god,
please drop us,
because we were just an asset. We weren't something that anyone understood. It was just like, well, I might need to sell that later.
You guys sold millions of records. We're gonna, keep you.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a poker chip in the game,
right? You're a poker chip in the game, and business is business, and you understand why they would do that. But as an artist, as someone trying to build a career, it's the worst. It's the worst possible scenario, because they don't want you to go, but they don't have any idea what to do with you, and they're perfectly willing to keep spending your money until you can never come out of that loop of things you have to pay back.
A great example of that is, I mean, we on our second record, and we're completely like forward into done, so we don't spend a lot of time going, woe was me, but it's interesting to visualize this. Our second record, a lot of money was spent to market it initially. We wrote every single song, produced it with our team that made the first record. It was like, hey, here it is. The IDJ had come into shape as we made the second record, and they were kind of like, hey, Hanson, of course, we're going to market this. 6 weeks after their second record, which had already sold 1 million records, they sat us down and went, I don't know, Hanson's brand is broken, which means we have to work to, like, this is too much work. And
they wanted us to do solo records.
Yeah, and that was
they literally sat us down.
And at a time of TRL and all that stuff where MTV actually mattered, we literally, we left. I remember we left TRL, where we'd been, the current video had been #1 for ever at that point already, and with thousands of fans outside and
filling Times Square.
Meanwhile, we have this direct connection with our audience, because they don't care about the internet at all. But us, we're like we're seeing the website, the forums, thousands of fans all over the planet. Hanson, we're so engaged.
We've got a tour booked.
And they're like, Hanson's brand is broken. And it just tells you the psyche of that culture. It was so, there's so much gluttony in the music industry at that time, where the industry was so cocky about like record sales and just this way of
that they were willing
just
to throw
trading
away
horses, not really going like building artists. And we're kind of like, okay, you guys obviously don't get this, and that was that was the beginning of the end.
But we saw that coming, though. That's the scary thing. We saw that coming when we were looking around at the boardroom tables, shall we say, looking at the players that be. We knew that. I mean, we did multiple times tried to get off that label because we knew that they did not understand what we were and what we were doing.
Boy, but you don't really get a choice. You just
you don't.
You get a call from your manager. Hey, you're on Def Jam now.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, and which is a whole other comment about the industry and the way contracts are set up, and the fact that you can just get traded. It's like being a baseball player where your contract is like, well, you have nothing to say about it. But anyway, we can go down that rabbit hole. But it led us to be confident in deciding to do bold things and leave, because, like we said, we had a view from the top. We're like, this is as good as it's ever going to get.
Yes.
And it's terrible. So it gave us the boldness to make the move, as opposed to an artist that might be, well, maybe one day they'll really get me. It was like, well, we've been there, and we know what that's like when you have a team. And so it gave us the confidence to forge our own path and start the label on our third record.
And that's exactly what you did. And here, a quarter of a century later, not only do you have a Christmas album out, but you have this greatest hits record, Middle of Everywhere, which has this song on it called I Was Born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That may be the best record that I think I've ever heard from HANSON.
Oh, wow. Really?
I our listeners have to go and listen to this. I was like clutching my heart listening to this song. I mean, it's listening to the lyrics to the song, and also the fact that then I went and watched the video, which has 11 of your 12 children between you in it. And I just was thinking, it's this beautiful song that is so positive at a time in music and in our culture when we need positivity. Right. And I was wondering how that song came about, because it felt like I opened up and I was listening to it when it was dark out, and yet it felt like the sun came out. Like it was, guys, congratulations.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Well, that's such a huge compliment. And I'll say this, people often refer to HANSON as, being happy, right? But it's really deeper than that. It's more about the word joy, which is a deeper sense of in what it has,
or optimism,
optimism with a sense of action, right? And one of the things, we love great pop music, so we always write in metaphor, and we know it's like, I woke up today and I had this thought, but I was born. We wrote that song a couple years before it obviously came out, and it was one of those things that it felt like walking into a room naked, because we really believe the lyrics of that song, which is, for me and for us, we believe we were born to do something no one is going to do ever, and each of us have that ability. Like each human, we genuinely believe that. And I think that
we all have a mark that we need to make on the world. We all have people that we need to take care of and influence and be a positive kind of force in the world. And it takes all of us working together to do that.
And that also means the person next to you or around you may not get that, but you've got to get it, right? And the lyric of that song is all about, having this crazy idea of what you're going to do, and actually saying, I actually really want to do that, and I believe I can. And I think that is that's not sunshine and rainbows. That's like, in spite of all that's around us, I'm going to actually claim that, right? I'm going to claim that I actually am going to pave the road out in front of me. I see this other path, and it's not about cockiness. It's about a sense of purpose.
Well,
just having all those children, did they inspire it? Because I feel like when I think of that, I think you must look into their eyes and say, I believe in you in a way that maybe you didn't even believe in yourselves. I mean, think of it. Those kids are at the age now that you were when you started.
Yes, they are.
I think you better get back on. I think you better get back on tour. You got fucking practice to work.
They get us back on tour because they're like, get away from me.
Why do you think we've been doing this?
Like, please leave.
There are two things. One, and anyone who ever has children, there's no way to gain the perspective you gain from raising kids without raising kids. Like, it's something different. You've never loved someone so much that essentially treated you so badly, right? Because kids, what they do is they look at the world through what they need and what they want, and it's beautiful, but it's also painful as a parent because you are their actual indentured servant.
You're the butler.
I was going to say, the one thing I think that shouldn't be missed when you listen to I Was Born, right? This song that is about painful optimism, this song that is about essentially a perspective that we don't allow ourselves to have outside of adolescence, right? Most people, you reach adulthood, you get to college, and you become jaded, and you go, okay, now I've got to get a job, or I got to get over. This is like our life story, right? It's not some idea. It literally is. We get to look at the world and go, I was born to do something no one's ever done before. This may sound optimistic to you, but it's actually my life, right? We were kids, and we said we want to be musicians. We want to, affect people through songs and have a, long career. When we first came out and our first big record was, huge, and people would go, what are you going to be doing in 5 years? And we go,
as in, like,
we go,
you could be doing on the 5
years.
And the amount of times that we got the patronizing, what are you going to do when you're old?
It's not about the patronizing, though. It's not about the patronizing. It's about the idea that you look at the world, and even at your highest moment, someone is still trying to figure out what's wrong with you. And this song is really about the fact that not everyone's going to get you, but you have to like shoot for that huge idea, because it's not worth it to go through life never having tried.
We are talking to Isaac, Zach, and
So well
Taylor,
said.
the Hanson men. Let me ask you quickly about that, and if I'm out of bounds, let me know. You guys began singing in church, very young, right?
Absolutely.
And I wondered, when you got serious about making music, did you think you'd be making music centered around your faith, spiritual music? Because I got to figure that there could have been people expecting that of you.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. We know who we are, and who we are, each of us, comes from a deep sense of purpose, which absolutely comes from growing up with strong faith. But we also decided very early on, and actually that was our first clash, was that we weren't going to go out and put that in front of people. We were going to be us and weave into our sense of self, our sense of self into our songs. And if you don't listen to Hanson and hear our sense of something bigger, that we feel about our life and where we are in the world, and then you're probably not listening to lyric. And so I think
that goes for everything from Umbop.
It's not about,
Umbop is about this sort of long tail. It's about the fact that most things in life just don't matter. They'll just fall away.
It's not a happy song.
No,
it's not. It's not.
The chorus is very catchy.
I mean, you hear I was born, this idea of purpose, and I think you hear that in a lot in our music. It's this sense of there's a resolve. There's something at the end of the tunnel.
It's light through the tunnel. That's really what it is. And our first clash early on was friends around us that had grown up with us being in the church and thinking that we were going to choose that path. And I was going, that is not what we're going to do. We are who we are. We believe who we are. If it's supposed to touch people and that message is supposed to get through, you should see it in our actions. But we're a band that cares about, we don't write songs about life. We don't write songs about about everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And
for God's sakes, I mean, I want to write Johnny Be Good.
We're not going to not write love songs, and not pursue music. Music is everything around us. It's the way you see the world. So
well, it also makes this sense of mission also makes its way onto the Christmas record, as Nick said before. Your second one, Finally It's Christmas. I'm in love with the song Someday at Christmas. It is just so good, and I mean it's one of those Christmas songs that's, I wouldn't say melancholy, but it brings in the fact that there is a somber side to Christmas. Someday at Christmas there won't be boys playing with bombs like kids play with toys. I mean, it's not just Rudolph, and there's Rudolph. Rudolph's there, sung by your kids, I think.
That's right.
But clearly you wanted this Christmas record to have some gravitas, some importance.
Oh yeah,
and it does.
I mean, the first one had quite a few of those kind of more somber moments too, but this record definitely gets a little deeper into that, and I think part of that is obviously that as 20 years go on, there are some songs that kind of stick out a little bit more in different ways as the years go on too.
Well, I would say, so picking songs for this album, was really not just about picking the best album for this moment, but also realizing that this album now is immediately paired with the one from 20 years ago. And so you're sort of building this bigger picture, and that really allowed this record, I think, to be a little slower, a little somber, touch on some of those notes that when you're 12, it's just hard for people to hear you sing about, in that clear way.
We have personal experience with it.
Well, a song like Someday at Christmas, it has life behind it. And whether you understand it or not at 12, it makes a little more sense to be sung when you're 30. It makes a little more sense to be sung from the perspective of a man looking at his own kids, looking at his own world. The record's still fun. I mean, there's so much, so many saxophone solos and, guitar solos.
Yeah, it's a Christmas party record for the most part.
Yeah, we didn't want to make a record that was suddenly Hanson become crooners. But
I did.
Yeah,
but that's a whole
Isaac was going for that.
You got outvoted.
But it does take its moments. It takes its moments.
Well, we have to wrap up with Isaac, Zach, and Taylor. Will you guys come back? Because I didn't even get a chance.
So
to talk.
much more to say.
I didn't even get a chance to talk about how you're beer baron. Send me some of that pops. One of my boys in Lawrence, Kansas, is the biggest beer snob ever. He hates everything, and he's like, "Dude, this is the truth."
And I just want to say, to hear you guys talk, and especially Zach, it's amazing to me the men you've grown up to be. I'm really proud. It's been a joy, and it's been a great part of my career to see you guys grow up to become who you've become, and that you're making better music than you ever have.
Thank you.
That's pretty fantastic.
Well, we appreciate that very much.
And this is an amazing record, and let us congratulate you the traditional feedback way. Sellouts!
They're indie rock.
Yeah,
Yes, we're total sellout.
This whole tour has been sold out, so yeah, we're done.
I pulled the Jason Newsted. All right. Hanson, you guys rock.